Hi, my name is Sean Collins, and I'm here speaking about consolation and desolation. They are, I guess, essentially extremes of things that crop up in your life that come and go, and you take heart in them, and things you take heart in sometimes turn out different than you intended. And I anticipate many things in my life that won't dissolve as it is, and that is the word I use. It's sort of like many of the problems sort of dissolve into the midnight of despair, if you want. Things that we hold dear, things that we have faith in, aren't the very things that we anticipate them to be, and they always are changing like a tide or the weather. So you have to find things in your life that you can count on, and it isn't to say that those things are always reliable, but you keep having to crest the wave and find those things that amount to the sum of your worth. I've lit a candle and I'm going to be sharing a few passages from the Touchstones Journal. Laura Wallace offers some words called determined seed. As frozen earth holds the determined seed, this sacred space holds our weariness, our worry, our laughter, and our celebration. Let us bring seed and soul into the light of thought, the warmth of community, and the hope of love. Let us seed together, hear together, love together. Let us worship. The Chalice of Communion Wine by Reverend Mariel Cleary. Long ago, the chalice of communion wine was set apart for the priests alone. We would all share in the bounty of the earth. Wind and milk, bread and meat, that no one may go hungry. Long ago, those who spoke their minds freely were put to death by fire. We would use fire to warm all bodies and light all minds. Long ago, freedom-loving people put flames upon a chalice as a symbol of freedom and sharing for all. As we light this flame, so we dedicate ourselves to freedom and sharing. This is an excerpt by the Reverend Kelly Wiseman Asproth Jackson called Holding Fast. The world is a slippery sort of thing. It can be hard, very hard, to hold on to all the many pieces of life. In our days on this earth, we may try new ideas, new plans, new relationships, careers, or places to live. No matter how many or how few sorts of things we devote our living to, we can be assured that not all of them will last. Well, there's plenty of trial and error to life, and what was familiar and sustaining will sometimes pass away, and what is exciting and new and untested does not always transform into a well-established part of our deeper selves. Sometimes, despite our best efforts and finest intentions, some piece of our world proves too slippery for us to hold on to. In his unpublished essay, Why I Gave Up Zen, contemporary science journalist John Horgan tells the story of his ill-fated attempt to take a course in Zen Buddhist meditation. Coming in with hopes of developing a spiritual practice that would contribute to his overall well-being, he found himself constantly distracted by frustrations that his internal critic could neither ignore nor forgive. Chief among these frustrations, he admits, were some of his classmates. He writes, "The worst was Cell Phone Man, so-called, because the first time he came into our class, his cell phone beeper kept going off. During seated meditation, he also infuriated me by yawning, sighing, and twisting his head with a crunching noise. When our instructor at the end of our sessions asked if anyone had any questions or comments, Cell Phone Man invariably piped up loudly. Once he told us that something amazing had happened to him the previous weekend, and all the thoughts in his head began to spontaneously turn into songs, and he realized that the creation is nothing more than God turning silence into song, which is really just vibrations. And, energy. Eventually, John Horgan took his frustrations and mental conflict about the class out into the snow with him, attempting to practice mindfulness and cross-country skiing. But even the cold simplicity of fresh snow and white sky could not save him from his wandering mind and all the sights and thoughts that intruded on him as he tried desperately to be here now. After berating himself repeatedly for stray thoughts, as varied as his daughter's cold, his wife's social activism, and his curiosity about the animal tracks crossing his path through the woods, Horgan finally gave up on the spiritual practice he was cultivating. It can be very hard to acknowledge to others and to ourselves that some goal, some challenge, some want of ours is beyond our grasp. Even when the job wasn't right for us, or the marriage just wasn't good for either of us, or that dream we were following took us down a path that we could not follow, even if we know in our minds that letting go is the right thing to do. It can be so hard and so painful to let go with our hearts. Yet our lives are shaped not only by what we carry with us, but also by what we have left behind. Unitarian Universalism deeply values search, ongoing growth, and the discovery of new ideas, thoughts, and perspectives. Often we find that our free and responsible search for truth and meaning requires us to leave behind what is familiar, inherited, or traditional. No less a prophet of this movement than William Ellery Channing expressed some of this sentiment when he wrote, "I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically repeat itself and copy the past, which does not live on old virtue, which does not enslave itself to precise rules, but forgets what is behind, listens for the new and higher monitions of conscience, and rejoices to pour in fresh and higher exertions." These are brave words, ones that match the brave work of going out, of finding what is new and familiar, and of questing for the truth, wherever it may lead. There are times when leaving where we are and letting go of what is necessary for growth, or for justice, or for peace, or for survival. But just as there is reason to celebrate letting go, there is also reason to honor holding fast, living with a persistent commitment to something larger than oneself. The poet Robert Frost describes steadfast and abiding commitment with these brief words: "The heart can think of no devotion greater than being sure to the ocean, holding the curve of one position, counting in endless repetition." What things in life require this persistence? The practice of religion, the exercise of citizenship, the construction and maintenance of an institution, and such as a partnership, a family, or an association of congregations. All these things may, and many more, may need lasting and abiding effort in order to endure. The institutions and identities by which we define ourselves are only so strong and so permanent as the human commitment out of which they are made. A friend of mine who was a long veteran of the U.S. Navy reminded me of a traditional naval tattoo. 2 words, 8 letters, inked across the fingers of both hands to read the instruction: hold fast. The safe journey of a ship often demands upon the strength and dedication of its crew in holding down or hauling in this line or that. The message is a reminder, it seems to me, that the common good of a boat relies on the embodied commitment of all those abroad. I received a poignant instruction on what it means to hold fast to something beloved while on a trip years ago to New Orleans. 15 of us from Boston's Arlington Street Church spent a week in the Crescent City, slinging paint and joint compound, hauling dirt, planting garden beds, and bearing witness. One late afternoon, our group took a solemn tour of the lower Ninth Ward, a section of the city that was ignored by the national imagination until the storms, their aftermath, and the American media turned that neighborhood into a spectacle of desolation. The Ninth Ward has been the heart of the working class black population of New Orleans for generations. Hit by the very worst of the catastrophic flooding that New Orleans experienced in the late summer of 2005, the lower Ninth was almost uniformly flattened. Staring out at what used to be several acres of well-loved homes, I saw whole blocks of houses reduced to vacant lots, their contents spilled out on the rubble and grass, with little sets of concrete steps leading up to front doorways that were no longer there. It is the sort of view that makes the soul grow coarse to survey the consequences of a broken canal wrought by human hands, ordered by human minds, uncaring to the risk it posed to human lives behind its walls. Seeing all those broken houses stirred in me feelings of both anger and grief. Carrying those feelings with me is one of the costs and one of the gifts of that journey south. But here's the reason I offer from it today. Amidst the ruin and rot, there stood a dirty white trailer. It was the sort furnished by FEMA or rented from a private company and used by pre-Katrina residents who have returned to the Gulf Coast to rebuild their broken homes. In a neighborhood that was all but completely empty, largely devoid of standing houses, let alone of people to live in them, this trailer made a bold statement. I am here, it seemed to say. I will hold to this place, my home. I will not be moved. It is not a question as to whether we will, in our lives, leave things which are familiar and well known to us behind. That much is a sure consequence of living. Likewise, we need to trust in things outside of ourselves in order to sustain our being. A tree needs roots, but it also needs branches. These, then, are the questions before us. How much courage will we show in our holding on and in our letting go? How much wisdom will we find to guide us in choosing between the one and the other? How much space will we make for both demands in ourselves and in others? Will there be honors for this immigrant, the convert, the refugee, as well as the loyal holdout, the born member, and the internal agitator? What are you holding on to that you need to let go of? And what have you let go of that you desperately need to pick up again? Be a Branch of the Tree of Life by Reverend Norman Naylor. Our eyes and minds turn now towards the ordinary, leaving the space made sacred by our presence. Take with you at least some seed of understanding, hope, and courage, and drop it into the confusion of the world. Nourish the seed that it might grow as a tree of life-giving shelter to the weary and hope to the despairing. Be yourself a branch of the tree of life. Amen. Well, thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed some of the things that I shared with you today. And I hope to see some of you soon. If soon amounts to 1 week or 1 month, hope that church can start over and see you in person. Thank you again.